Imagine an old man, perhaps 75 years old, standing under a vast, inky desert sky. The air is cool, carrying the scent of dust and distant campfires. Above him, a million stars blaze, a dazzling, indifferent canvas. This is Abram, later Abraham, and he is staring into that immense darkness, a profound loneliness settling over him. He is childless. His future, and the future of his people, seems to stretch out, barren and empty. He has left everything behind on a promise that, you can almost feel the weight of that silence, the quiet despair of a man who has followed a divine call, only to face what seems like an impossible end. Suddenly, a voice, not a whisper in the wind, but a clear, resonant declaration that pierces the cosmic silence and the silence of his own heart. "Fear not, Abram." Just 2 words, yet they are a divine shield against the crushing burden of the unknown. They cut through the quiet dread, the human anxiety that gnaws at you when your deepest hope. What kind of fear is God addressing here? It is not merely the fear of enemies, but the deeper, more insidious fear of a life unfulfilled, a promise abandoned, a future that might never arrive. This powerful phrase, "fear not," appears again and again throughout the biblical narrative, a consistent echo across millennia, touching the lives of prophets, kings, and ordinary people. It is a phrase that transcends context, yet always lands with specific, intimate power. You might think it's just a sim. Every time God says, "fear not," He is not just telling you to be brave. He is revealing something fundamental about His character, His presence, and His plan for your life. And He is asking you to lean into that truth. Here's what most people miss about these divine pronouncements. They are rarely given when things are comfortable or clear. They come in moments of profound crisis, at the edge of the unknown, when human strength has failed and hope is fading. Think of Abram, a solitary figure. The Hebrew word for fear, yer, often carries the dual meaning of terror and awe. When God says fear not, He is often distinguishing between a paralyzing terror and a reverent awe of His power and presence. He is saying, "Let your awe of me replace your terror of everything else." This pattern, this divine intervention at the brink of despair, continues with another towering figure, Moses. You find Moses, an 80-year-old shepherd, standing on holy ground in the wilderness of Midian. Before him, a bush burns with fire, yet is not consumed. He hears a voice calling him by name, commanding him to return to Egypt, to confront the most powerful empire on earth, and lead his people, the enslaved Israelites, to freedom. You can almost hear the tremor in his voice, the flood of excuses pouring from his lips. Who am I? What if they don't believe me? I am slow of speech and tongue. He is terrified, overwhelmed by the enormity of the task, by his own perceived inadequacies. And God's response? Not an explanation of how he will succeed, not a detailed battle plan, but a simple, profound assurance. I will be with you. Then, implicitly, the message, fear not. This is not a dismissal of Moses' very real fears. It is an acknowledgement that his fear is natural, but his divine companion is supernatural. For Moses, the command to fear not is an antidote to the fear of failure, the fear of not being enough, the fear of monumental responsibility. It is a reminder that the mission is not his alone to accomplish, but God's. You see, the power to overcome the impossible does not come from within you, but from the one who called you. And this is where it gets remarkable. Years later, after Moses has passed, his successor Joshua stands on the precipice of the promised land. Before him lies the formidable city of Jericho, with its massive walls. Behind him, the wilderness and the ghost of a giant leader he could never hope to replace. The weight of expectation, the legacy of Moses, the seemingly insurmountable obstacles. All of it could easily breed a deep, paralyzing fear. You might wonder, how could one man possibly fill such shoes? How could he lead a rebellious people into unknown battles? Once again, the divine voice breaks through. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. The phrase "do not be afraid" is repeated multiple times in Joshua chapter 1. This is not some empty cheerleading. This is a divine transfer of assurance, a solemn vow. For Joshua, fear not is about overcoming the fear of inadequacy, the fear of leadership, and the fear of the future. It's about understanding that God's presence is not contingent on your predecessor's greatness, but on his own unchanging faithfulness. When God says, "Fear not," he is reminding you that your past does not dictate your future, and his promises are always bigger than your problems. Stay with me, because the context for these "fear not" declarations grows even more desperate. Consider Gideon, a young man, the least in his father's house, from the weakest clan in Manasseh. You find him hiding in a winepress, secretly threshing wheat to keep it from the Midianites who were ravaging Israel. His people are oppressed, impoverished, and utterly demoralized. He is a picture of timidity and despair. He is not a warrior. He is a farmer in hiding, and yet, an angel of the Lord appears. But before the battle, God tells Gideon, "If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with Purah your servant, and listen to what they say. Afterward, your hands will be strengthened to go down against the camp." God does not demand a fearless leader. He offers reassurance to a fearful one. He grants Gideon a divine eavesdropping mission, allowing him to overhear an enemy soldier recounting a dream of a barley loaf destroying their camp. This small, seemingly insignificant detail is God's plea. Her fear is not of a military threat or an impossible task, but a fear of the unknown, a fear of scandal, a fear of the utterly unexpected, and again, the divine response. "Do not be afraid, Mary, you have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus." The angel reveals a plan so utterly beyond human comprehension. A virgin birth, a divine son, that it demands a leap of faith that defies all social norms and natural laws. For Mary, fear not is about surrendering to God's kairos, his perfect, opportune time, even when his plan seems to turn your entire world upside down. It is a profound invitation to trust in the impossible, because the impossible is where God often chooses to work. There's one more thing about these divine assurances, and it brings us to the very heart of the New Testament. The stakes here are not just personal legacy or national survival. They are immediate life and death. Picture this. Jesus and his disciples are in a boat on the Sea of Galilee. He is asleep, exhausted. Suddenly, a furious squall sweeps down. The waves crash over the boat, threatening to swamp it. These disciples are experienced fishermen. They know these waters. This is not just a passing shower. This is a deadly storm. Their faces are etched with terror. They are not just afraid. They are convinced they are about to die. You can imagine the panic, the desperate bailing, the shouts above the wind and waves. They rush to Jesus, waking him with a desperate plea. "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" Their fear is raw, primal. It's the fear of oblivion, the fear of being abandoned to the forces of chaos. Jesus wakes, looks at the storm, and then turns to his disciples. He rebukes the wind and the waves, and immediately, there is a profound calm. The sea becomes as smooth as glass. Then, he turns his gaze back to his disciples, not with comfort, but with a question that pierces their terror. "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" This is not a criticism of their emotional response to a life-threatening situation. This is not a dismissal of their very real danger. This is a challenge to their understanding of his presence. This is not about being brave. This is not about suppressing feelings. This is about recognizing who is in the boat with them. The ultimate antidote to fear is not courage, but the realization of God's active presence in your storm. Their fear stemmed from forgetting who he was, from seeing only the storm and not the calm authority right beside them. This scene on the lake reveals the deepest truth behind every fear not in Scripture. It is not an exhortation to self-reliance, nor is it a blind optimism. It is an invitation to trust in the unwavering presence of a sovereign God. The fear God addresses is often the fear of being alone, of facing overwhelming odds without divine intervention. When you are terrified in the dark, as a child might be, the greatest comfort is not a logical explanation of why there are no monsters, but the simple, reassuring presence of a loving parent. The parent doesn't just say, "Don't be afraid," they are there. Their presence fills the void of terror. The Roman historian Tacitus, writing about the early Christians, noted their remarkable steadfastness in the face of persecution. While he likely didn't understand the theological underpinnings, he observed their uncommon resolve. This fortitude, this ability to fear not even in the shadow of death, was rooted in a conviction of divine presence. It wasn't about a lack of natural fear, but a greater trust in a God who promised never to leave or forsake them. The call to fear not is always intertwined with the promise, I am with you. It is the profound truth that you are never truly alone, no matter how isolating your struggle may feel. Think of it this way. Your fear tells you that you are small, vulnerable, and at the mercy of circumstances. God's fear not tells you that He is great, all-powerful, and sovereign over those very circumstances. It is a fundamental realignment of your perspective. It is not an absence of danger, but the presence of deliverance. It is not a denial of suffering, but the promise of strength through it. It is not a guarantee that bad things won't happen, but an assurance that God will hold you even when they do. This is the profound implication of every divine, fear not. Your anxieties are real, but God's love and power are more real. The challenge, for you and for me, is to internalize this truth, to allow the divine command to silence the clamor of our anxieties. To remember that the God who spoke to Abram under the stars, who called Moses from a burning bush, who stood with Joshua before Jericho, who empowered Gideon against an impossible army, who chose Mary for an impossible task, and who calmed the storm with a word, is the same God who speaks to you today. He knows your fears, your doubts, your insecurities. He knows the storms raging in your life. And His message remains unchanged, as potent and as personal as it was millennia ago. So, what can you take from every time God said fear not? First, the core truth is this: God's presence is the ultimate antidote to fear. It is not a psychological trick or a mere positive affirmation. It is the unwavering reality that when God is with you, no external threat or internal anxiety can ultimately overcome you. His fear not is inseparable from His I am with you. Second, the implication for you. Fear is a natural human response, but faith calls for trust beyond it. God never shall. He meets them in their fear, acknowledges it, and then invites them to place their trust in His sovereign power. Your feelings are valid, but they do not have to dictate your actions or your hope. You are called to respond to fear not with stoicism, but with an active, defiant trust in God's goodness. And finally, the emotional punch. The command to fear not is ultimately an invitation to an intimate, loving relationship with a God who cares deeply about your anxieties. He doesn't just issue He wants you to experience His hest, His steadfast, loyal love, which casts out fear. It is a personal, tender invitation to let go of control and rest in His embrace. Which of these moments, where God said fear not, resonates most deeply with a fear you've faced? Share your thoughts in the comments below.